Louis Gate Jr. is a man of many titles. Professor of Humanities, Chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies at Harvard, one of Time magazine's most influential Americans. But it is this title on the cover of Boston magazine, and written large inside, that critics say is racist. And the critics are loud, as editor Craig Unger knows.
You made this public when you put a racial epithet on the front of Boston magazine.
The Reverend Charles Stith is lead critic, but not everyone in the black community agrees. The Reverend Gene Rivers.
Charles, why are we playing the race card?
Why do you feel the need to defend that?
Listen.
And the publisher?
That's one of the most sophisticated pieces of reporting on race of any magazine in the country. People should read it rather than just call me a racist.
Editor Unger says he regrets the controversy, but does not apologize for the article. For today, Rick Davis, NBC News.
More on this now. Craig Unger is the editor of Boston Magazine. Joan Wallace Benjamin is president of the Urban League in the Boston area. And the Reverend Eugene Rivers is a contributing writer for Boston Magazine. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Mr. Unger, let's start with you. This profile of Professor Gates in the magazine is complimentary. He's an impressive man, but now you know there's an awful lot of attention being paid not to what's in the article, but how the article is headlined. Were you surprised by this?
Absolutely. I don't think it's a racial epithet. We thought the headline was provocative, but not at all racist.
So provocative. You intended to get people talking by putting this on the cover of your magazine.
Not like this. I really didn't expect a reaction like this.
But, I mean, when you put the term head Negro in charge on the cover of your magazine, you didn't expect this kind of an uproar?
Not at all. It's really, a lot of people regard it as an inoffensive term. It's used to mean, black writers use it and talk about Louis Farrakhan. It means a guy who, a black person who's regarded as having power by whites.
So a compliment? Can you go as far as to call it a compliment?
Well, I wouldn't say it. No, it has many different meanings. It can be read many different ways.
Ms. Wallace Benjamin, you don't like this headline.
No, I don't like
Tell
this
me
headline.
what's offensive to you.
Well, it's an offensive use of a historically, racially loaded term against the African-American community. It is insensitive, it is offensive, and it has been used as a way by the magazine to sell the magazine to the public in Boston.
So this is a sheer attempt to provoke public opinion in your mind. It has, you don't think that Mr. Unger really cared about the history part of this? You think he just wanted to sell magazines?
Well, I mean, head Negro in charge is a euphemistic replacement for head nigger in charge. And as uncomfortable as everyone is about saying that, that is what the term means. And so to put that on the cover of a magazine as a way to talk about anyone for that matter, and in fact the piece is a very good piece of journalism, is inappropriate, it's offensive, it's disingenuous on the part of the magazine.
You mentioned slavery. The term does have its roots in slavery, but is there any use of it today historically in current times? Do you hear it being used by your peers today?
I have heard it used within the African-American culture and community, and there's a very big distinction here between what is used within the culture, among friends, among the community itself, and what is used by a mainstream magazine, predominantly white and suburban, on the front cover to sell the magazine.
Reverend Rivers, it appears what Ms. Wallace Benjamin is saying is it's okay if members of the African-American community use this term, but I certainly couldn't get away with using this term. How do you feel about it?
While I applaud my good friend Joan Benjamin's, or I understand her position, the evidence, the facts, the history, and the current political theater surrounding this issue don't support that view. Professor Gates, I'm told by students, uses the term publicly at Harvard. So if that's the case, then why aren't we going after Professor Gates?
Matt, what's most important here is that a large segment of the African-American leadership, business community, whites, blacks, Latinos, Asians, the political leadership in Boston, the business leadership, and the mayor himself have said that they are offended by the title of this magazine. And so therefore, if one of us is offended, all of us is offended. And it is therefore the responsibility of the magazine to take responsibility for what they have done and in fact apologize to the African-American community for the offense.
I'll give you a chance in 1 second, but I mean, journalism by nature offends a lot of people.
Well, but you know, maybe that's a dialogue that ought to be stimulated by this controversy. Language is an important thing. Language counts. And language particularly counts in the areas of journalism and with the media. And so maybe this is an opportunity for us to look at that issue and look at whether or not it is appropriate for a magazine to play fast and loose with language in an irresponsible and insensitive way.
All right, Reverend Rivers, go ahead.
Actually, last night I went out on the street corners in inner city Boston with the magazine and interviewed young people. I said, there's a big brouhaha among the leadership regarding this issue. What do you young people think? To the last person, every one of the young people that I spoke with on the streets, not the professional protest leadership, but the young people said, this is irrelevant. I need a job.
With all due
We need to reduce crime. We need to expand literacy. We would like the black leadership not to play Ebonics police with white mainstream magazines, but to focus on the
issue of
issues
Ebonics
of
police
employment,
is a very
reducing crime, accessing employment. All of the young people. I went to a jail last night, talked with inmates.
Real quickly,
they said,
Reverend, go ahead.
listen, we are not interested in these issues. We need black leadership to focus on what's more important.
Let's let her comment on that.
This is a diversion. Ebonics police and all of that language is, a cute soundbite, but it has nothing to do with this issue. The fact of the matter is the city of Boston is rife with racial tension throughout time. There are many of us in the civil rights community not only working on this issue. The Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, for example, runs education, employment, and training for young men and women, a computer technology center. So we are operating on all fronts, and all fronts are what is necessary. When the slights and indignities like this are able to go unaddressed, the more hatred, larger, more hateful acts of discrimination and crime are able to fester in the climate and in the environment.
Mr. Unger, you have an interesting defense here. When people say that you or your magazine might be racist, your response is, hey, I wouldn't have put this article or this profile of Professor Gates in the magazine, which, by the way, is extremely complimentary, if I were a racist.
Right. It's a 12,000-word piece on a major black intellectual, and we've done very serious reporting on race, and I'm very proud of it. And if anything, if we're guilty of anything, it's that in that reporting, some racial secrets come out, and one of them may be that there are divisions within the black community.
You know, what I would ask Mr. Unger is that if he thinks it was such a fine, which it was, 12,000-word piece, why isn't Henry Louis Gates on the cover of the magazine? Instead, he decides to take a racial epithet and put it on the front of a magazine whose readership is primarily white and suburban as a way to stimulate...
Why isn't Henry Louis Gates complaining? Henry Louis Gates has been shrewd enough to recognize that this is a cul-de-sac.
This is not,
Gene, Henry Louis Gates did not himself take a position.
This is not about Henry Louis Gates. This is not about you. This is not about me. This is about a segment of the African-American community that is offended by what this magazine has done. It is about a community of Boston that struggles with the issue of race. It is about all of us working hard on this issue.
Mr. Unger, do you think that an apology would be appropriate if there are people who are offended, and obviously there are?
Yeah, I've said that I regret that people are offended, but I'm not going to, I don't buy the race card. I really don't buy that.
This is an uncreative use of the race card.
Without an apology, it is very difficult, in my opinion, for the magazine to move forward on the critical reforms that are necessary within the magazine, like diversity training for its staff and leadership,
like the diversification of the staff. You don't seem to agree with them.
The only voices in the community that you have prepared to speak in favor of this magazine are two ministers on the payroll of the magazine.
Is there, let me ask the last question to Joan here. Is there a possible upside to all this, that because of the controversy, because of the fact you're on national television talking about it, that more people will pick up that magazine and learn about Professor Gates?
On this.
Well, that could be. I mean, what's most important about this issue is that it will give us the opportunity to discuss language. It will give us the opportunity to discuss the journalistic use of language. But that does not exonerate the magazine from making this right for the African-American community in Boston and across this nation.
Ms. Wallace-Benjamin, Craig Unger, Reverend Rivers, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
7:50. This is Today on NBC.
My game.